Ooh, welcome to Generation Gap Sports. Broadcast 16, a creepy look into the dark world of sports is seen through the very evil eyes of our gang of six. Ranging in age from 25 and 70, these creatures take you on a journey to sports hell, discussing everything from the real to the nonsensical. We're family. Like in any family, and we don't agree on things can get a little heated. Now, tonight, unrelenting, unsurpassed, unvarnished, and definitely unrestrained, let's meet the family. From oldest to youngest, we have Bob, yours truly, John, Charlie, Bobby, Benny, and Nick. Okay, tonight's topic. We've all been to creepy, spectacular, spooky things. Sometimes they're actually in arenas or football stadiums. Question is tonight, how do we enjoy these particular events? Do we think the game experience is more exciting and thrilling than in the past? Or is there a lot of noise and malarkey just to keep us from watching the same thing on TV at home? Old brother Bob, you've been accustomed to many of these sorts of events over the years. What's your initial take?
It depends on the sport. The first sports events that I can remember attending in person were Dartmouth College football games back in the late 1950s. And what I distinctly remember is folks on street corners selling pennants and buttons. They would a team button that had a little brass football hanging down from it and a couple of ribbons, green and white. And every school had them. And what was also notable was that you had they would sell stuff for both teams. The visitor was always recognized as well, and a variety of football pennants. That model was pretty well sustained when I moved to Wisconsin. We started going to Wisconsin games with Dad up in Madison. The variety of pennants that were available was bigger, but that's one of the signal things that I remember. Also, there was a lot of continuity in the in-stadium experience. There was nothing artificial going on. There was the fans, there was the crowd, the cheerleaders, the marching band, and folks just watched or perhaps listened to the band as the game time approached. I don't remember all the special effects arriving in stadiums really until at some point in the 1980s. The scoreboards got a little bit more jazzed up, and by the 1990s, it was starting to become a big show. But I'm still in a lot of ways attached to the original experience when all the excitement was generated by the crowd itself, and there seemed to be a lot of interest. Of course, it would depend on how well a game was attended, but I kind of look back to that era as being a lot of fun. Now, I still think the college football games tend to have preserved that. It's the pro football games where you have the attempt to create something of a three-ring circus to keep everybody entertained. I think the greatest level of continuity in the game day experiences in baseball, where very little has changed before the game. The scoreboards are fancier, but you still can take in batting practice and fielding practice if you want. And there's not a heck of a lot going on. There might be a little video going on in the background on the scoreboard, but it's not a big distraction. Ice hockey, perhaps, was among the first to engage in spectacle. You had a guy playing an organ in hockey games, and there'd be all kinds of little jingles to sort of get the crowd worked up. And that's become universal, by the way. When I went to games last year in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, they were using the NHL model entirely, with little games and contests between periods, same stuff on the scoreboard, the band's blaring, they had cheerleaders, So in a lot of sports, they seem to have found what their current niche is, and I think folks have probably been raised on the modern scoreboard and all the special sound effects and everything are probably quite comfortable with it. Although to me, the artificiality of it always kind of jumped right out.
You know, Charlie, I remember 30 years ago. I'm picking on the old guys here first. I remember you and I traveled to Las Vegas. We were going to watch the Wisconsin Badgers hoops team, which had pretty modest talent, take on the running Rebels of UNLV. And I remember before that game, you and I came, of course, the old Wisconsin field house, where it was, you know, great, loud, friendly environment. Well, there were not a lot of pyrotechnics there. And we got to Vegas, they had fireworks inside and all this crazy light show and whatnot. And I remember you and I were thinking, before this game even starts, we are screwed. There's no way we're going to win this. So you've seen a lot. You've experienced the game through what it was and now what it is today in terms of the game day experience. How do you feel about
it? First of all, I do vividly remember that game. And Jerry Tarkanian, and they had a loaded Las Vegas UNLV team. And they turn the lights off and they get the Shark Tank music going, right?
Right.
And I think we were like 5 minutes in, Wisconsin's down like 30-4.
Right.
Nobody knew it hit them. But, I think back to when we were kids and Dad had both football and basketball Badger season tickets. And we lived about an hour away. And, I think the football games were probably pretty much always 1 o'clock or 1:30 kickoff. Basketball was probably at 7 or 7:30 p.m. And we would never miss a game. Those tickets got used every time. And I think, one of the things that was going on back then is that watching it on TV was rarely an option. And today it's always an option. So, anyway, that doesn't speak directly to the game experience itself, but in a relative way, it does. I mean, today I probably use about half the tickets that I have available to me. And TV is a big factor, both in terms of offering an easier option to stay home and have the convenience, have the beer in the refrigerator, avoid the parking. And then, when you go to a game these days, and it's worst in football, it's also a problem in basketball, is TV has made the games just so damn long. And there's so much effort now that goes to trying to make those like 3 or 4 minute breaks entertaining. But I don't know, the effort seems pretty strained. It's not that fun sometimes. And the games just stretch over way too many minutes. So I think TV in a couple ways has really diminished the game experience from my point of view. Interestingly, you mentioned like the Wisconsin Fieldhouse. I did go to, for the first time ever, I went to a Wisconsin women's volleyball game yesterday afternoon. And that was actually, they've created a great experience there. It's really fun. It's really intimate. I mean, they do generally sell it out with about 6,000 fans. It's a really, really positive environment. So, I mean, I would say, interestingly, that experience is probably, as good as, in my opinion, as you're going to get with a Badger football or basketball game.
Interesting you mentioned the volleyball game. I, too, have gone to a couple of games there, and the energy level is very cool. And it's reminiscent of the old days when the Badger basketball team, men's team, played in the field house. Now, something else happened yesterday is that, in all likelihood, I've not seen the ratings yet, but in all likelihood, that was the most watched volleyball game, college women's volleyball game ever. And that was broadcast on the Fox network after the Packers-Vikings football game. At least in the Midwest, it was Vikings and Packers. So if that would work, if it actually would find viewership for women's volleyball on TV, eventually you'd probably run the same issues that you're talking about with with men's basketball or football at the college level, long media timeouts. So I'd be kind of curious as to how that will work out over time. So Nick, you bring the most youth to this particular topic. Some of these issues in terms of what it used to be like are totally lost on you, but generally, guy in your shoes, what comes to mind?
I think what comes to mind first to me is college basketball. Because I do think even I've got less I guess years of experience compared to you guys for comparison. But I have noticed the difference in college basketball, specifically in Madison, or at least the Wisconsin basketball team. I felt like when I was a kid, the energy and attendance was always really high, and it was always really well driven by the student section. It kind of felt like if the tenacity of a high school student section was scaled up to that of a whole college called field house. By the time I was in Madison, and this could be a reflection on maybe the team was less good, but it's good years. It just didn't feel the same, and I do feel like with the lack of continuity just on the teams in college basketball, this will probably keep trending in the same direction. But even compared to football, I felt like college basketball was just really the most intense, in a positive way, in-game experience. And it feels like that might be going away for different reasons than television viewership. Just, lessening interest in the sport, really.
Sure. And Bobby, I can think of no more rabid sports fan than you, whether it's watching probably on TV or being live, or knowing in advance of some of the more significant games for the Chiefs. I know you took a rather active stance with some of your friends, really building up the energy that maybe they couldn't feel at the actual stadium the game was being played, but certainly where you were. How do you feel about this? Where do you get the most satisfaction of enjoying a game?
Yeah, I mean, certainly Chiefs games, there's not much better in terms of atmosphere. That crowd is always ramped up, ready to go. Obviously, the team has been really good for a while now. And so they don't have trouble getting energy in that stadium. It's the best home atmosphere in the NFL for a reason, I would certainly argue. But with hockey, for example, as kind of was touched on a little bit earlier, it used to have that atmosphere where they would be playing organ music and things like that. And a lot of that has kind of gone away. And I wish they would bring it back. Most teams now are just blaring, music throughout the arena rather than that kind of old-timey organ feel, which I think was definitely better. So, the Vegas Golden Knights have certainly introduced their own style. They're doing it very much the way Vegas does things, big showmanship. Some of it seems, looks a little bit corny on TV, but from everything I've heard, being there in person is unbelievable. And so that's certainly got to be a bucket list item now for any big hockey fan. A lot of sports are struggling with attendance, partly because of these games are getting way too long. Baseball is actually starting to change some rules to try and shorten the games up. But you have some teams that are actually reducing capacity because they're not filling as many seats as they used to, but they want to keep that same atmosphere. So they reduce the capacity a little bit to kind of counteract it. But I think by and large, the best atmosphere you're going to get still, in my opinion, is with college sports as far as being there in person. Partly because, you got the history of the bands and, the student section, really providing that energy and the rivalries and things like that. Certainly some of that is in jeopardy with all this realignment that's going on. But the college atmosphere, I think the nostalgia and everything that goes into that I think really draws me in and draws a lot of people in. In football, you have an issue largely in the NFL. What seems to have started happening the last several years is you're getting some situations where people are getting a little bit too liquored up and can't handle it, and you're seeing fights in the stands. Maybe it's just seems like a bigger problem because it's a viral video every time, but it does seem like some NFL stadiums are kind of losing control a little bit of the people that are coming to games. So that's something that I think needs to be addressed. But then, yeah, other sports that are totally different. Tennis, for example, is just a really quiet atmosphere. It's all about being polite and nobody talking, and polite claps in between serves when somebody scores a point. So it's a totally different atmosphere there. But then you got some stuff, like horse racing. Kentucky Derby, for example, is really more of an event than anything. And you'll have people, dress into the nines. Women will generally have some sort of fancy hat. And so a lot of different sports will have different atmospheres. But other than hockey, which is always my favorite sport live, because there's nothing that beats a live hockey game. I think college sports are where it's at for me for the most part.
And I definitely feel the same way. Because like for the most part, college sports, you still get that purity of energy, which is why I love hearing the crowd get active. I love it when you feel that tension in the stands, because I think somehow that tension in the stands actually impacts the play on the field a little bit. Whereas when things get too canned in terms of music or other types of entertainment during the game, I think you lose a lot of that. Now, it's interesting. You look at some sports, you look at, say, golf, which is basically only followed at the professional level for a number of reasons. But during, I'll say, typical PGA events, you're going to find that fans are very, very polite and only react to positive things on the golf course. Whereas when you get into events like the Ryder Cup, where it's much more team focused, it gets very, very partisan and quite loud and sometimes borderline unsportsmanlike. But I look at I'll say the latest experiment in professional sports is live golf, where they've tried to copy the quality of play you find on the PGA Tour, but make it a team event like the Ryder Cup. And they have purposely tried to stimulate a lot of music and high activity, high sensory overload on the golf course around play, and certainly for television. And so far, that format has laid a really big egg. No one's interested, and I don't think the format helps a whole lot. Now, Benny, you've traveled the world a lot lately, and you've been going to games, in places like Japan, and certainly you've seen, college games at the level where you were at St. John's. We got you to Madison for some, really big time sports. What's your read on all this?
Well, it's interesting. I've kind of seen some changes for sure. Also, real quick, shout out to Rob Trexler in the comments. He's making some comments here. I noticed saying Bobby's about to chop some people up, which could be the case. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing has been seeking autographs. When I was a kid, I used to seek autographs all the time, especially at baseball games. I have a few hundred baseball autographs I got at games. And with the netting they've put up around the field, it's nearly impossible, it seems like, to get an autograph because, you could barely stick your finger through the little holes in the netting. So I don't know how anyone would get an autograph of the ball unless you were like at a certain area where like the netting can open up a little bit and you can stick your hand through it. But yeah, it's quite limited. I'd like to almost see them lift that up before the game and then, bring it down later or something, because the fan experience to me at a baseball game, if you're trying to seek an autograph, which is kind of a traditional baseball thing to do, going back to like Babe Ruth days, fans hanging out over the dugout or whatever, trying to get autographs. I mean, it's nearly impossible to do it today. So to me, that's declined a lot. It's pretty bad when I think about that aspect of a baseball fan experience. In terms of American football, I still feel like it's about the same in terms of getting autographs. I'm not sure. It might depend on the stadium rules. There's no netting obviously being added to those games. I do recall the St. Louis Rams were pretty strict about letting people sort of in the lower sections where you could access players for autographs in the tunnel. St. Louis Rams don't exist anymore, so maybe that's why. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's been interesting. But I do think that, when it comes to atmospherics of people getting really pumped up and wild, I think in American sports, it's really college football. Across Europe, it's like soccer games. And Japan, I mean, it really seems like baseball games. People are so lively there. When I was in Japan watching a game in Yokohama, I mean, it was pretty wild. It was just like a European soccer game with fan sections chanting back and forth. And so it's interesting. American professional sports really kind of lacks that type of atmosphere that you might get in other countries at their professional sporting events, or that you might get at the college level.
Okay. So let's just do a quick poll. You take pick your favorite sport. And you compare the at-game experience now versus 20 years ago. You like it better today, or do you prefer it 20 years ago? Bob, let's start with you, oldest to youngest.
Right. Well, I think I'll talk about football. I think I liked it more in the past because it just seemed more genuine. But having seen the change and remembering where it was, that's how it appears from my perspective. So I would go old school. Only 20 years ago doesn't really cut it. We're talking 40, 50 years ago, more
Okay.
like it.
Try to keep it at 20 so more guys could relate. But okay. So you know what? For me, maybe I've gotten spoiled. Maybe there's a lot of things going on at games today that I don't appreciate enough. But I do think generally I like the authenticity, the sincerity of feeling of the fans. And I think a lot of things that get piped into today's game, especially at the professional level, when it comes to music or message boards telling people to cheer and things like that, it seems kind of lame to me. So, and of course, the big thing I think Charlie mentioned, it's just the media timeout. So just take too damn long. So anyway, I think I did prefer it years back because I think you just feel the energy in the stands and it made more of an impact in terms of affecting the game. Charlie, how about you?
I'll speak to college basketball, and I think my thoughts are probably consistent with yours. I think it was a better experience 20 years ago. I remember lots of games where you'd leave the game and you felt like you yourself had just played. There would be so many possessions that felt like life and death, and the entire crowd was all in, seemingly all the time if it was a relatively close game. And it just seems like a really rare occurrence these days. So I think there's a lot of factors contributing to that, but it's not as intense as it once was. Got it.
Bobby, I think you're our most intense fan day in, day out. How do you feel?
Yeah, so for hockey, I would definitely say I preferred it 20 years ago to now. I think the piping in of the loud music, just takes away from some of the organic ambiance. I prefer the old school with organs and just letting the fans drive the atmosphere. I think that's the best way to do it. I'd prefer to go back before all the piping in of loud music and trying to artificially amp people up got introduced.
Got it. Benny, what's your call?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the sporting events I went to most growing up was professional baseball, professional football, professional soccer. Those were the teams that we had in Kansas City area. For baseball, I think it's gotten worse, just as I said before, the fan experience in terms of like seeking autographs before games, it's just not as fan friendly anymore. People are kind of cut off from the field, it seems like. So I think that's worse. I think for American football, I feel like it's kind of the same. I think they've done a better job of maintaining that sort of same type of atmosphere. American soccer, I think, has improved just because there's so much more interest in it. I mean, Sporting Kansas City used to play in a barely filled Arrowhead Stadium where the Kansas City Chiefs play. And then after that, they played in like an independent league baseball stadium. So that was really awkward. And today they have their own like really fancy, nice stadium. So I think for American soccer in the US, it's improved a lot in terms of atmosphere. It feels like a real game. And they've done a lot to try to create sort of what an atmosphere would be like in Europe with, whole fan sections where people are chanting the entire game and stuff. So.
Got it. Finally, Nick, when you were growing up, your dad, your grandpa, me, we tried real hard to get you to, become a rabid Badger fan. I think some of that stuck. How do you feel about it?
I would say it's stuck. I mean, speaking to college football and basketball, it seems like football's had a better go of kind of maintaining the traditions. And in turn, the experience is pretty similar. But it seems like basketball, just fan interest overall has kind of waned. I don't know if that's the whole reason why the game experience has suffered and the intensity has suffered. Maybe because college basketball is no longer the single hub of future NBA talent that it once was, whereas college football still is for the NFL. Maybe that's part of why interest is just not the same. But yeah, I look at college basketball specifically as a place where it's consistently exciting, intense. It doesn't feel as much the same anymore.
All right. Okay. It's almost Halloween. Everybody here is cuddled up with some sort of spectacular drink. Charlie, you got this one?
Yeah, in my continued quest for 100 non-alcoholic days for this year, I'm up to number 77 today. So I've again replaced my alcohol with marijuana with little THC laced green canvas lemonade tea.
Charlie, there's a lot of pressure on you. You got 23 to pick up in the last 2 months of the year, and these are social months. You're gonna have to lay low. You're going to Napa next week.
What's that?
Holy cow!
It's gonna be tough.
It's gonna be tough, man. I feel for you. I think maybe you got to reset your goal. Maybe to recalibrate a little bit.
I think no matter what, this is going to be a victory of sorts. I mean, I'm at 77 this year. Last year was probably 10. So that's pretty good.
Okay. That's why you want to score it.
A winner already.
Great. Well, back here in Monroe, I'm not heading to Napa, but in my quest to reach 360 days of drinking per year, and I can't. I have to stay perfect from here on out, I think. Tonight I am drinking a wonderful glass of Napa bread and butter Chardonnay. Tonight, because when we're done with this broadcast, I'm gonna kick back. I'm gonna have some chicken, some macaroni and cheese, and white wine's gonna really fit that just nicely.
Is anybody else?
How about you?
Who? I don't even know what people said. Charlie or John? Who's talking?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you guys are cutting each other off, so I'm having trouble.
I tried to kick it over to Nick.
Oh, okay.
I can take it. This was left in my apartment over the weekend. It's a collector's edition, Busch Light. I think a lot of people refer to this as the corn beer. It's got a beautiful camouflage can, collector's edition. I'll probably still throw away the can, but it's fine. Works for a Monday night.
Okay. Benny, how about you?
Well, as I always try to do, I try to, make a special moment for all my fans out there that watch, especially the millions surely watching via live stream right now on Facebook. Hello, I acknowledge you. I acknowledge your existence. They appreciate that. But so today I decided to make things especially interesting, just for Halloween. So the first thing I have, which is I would say kind of a spooky drink. And I mean that in a literal sense, not just kind of a joking sense here. So my father-in-law brought me some homemade vodka from Armenia, made from apricots. And apparently his niece's husband's father made this, and they made it, and they put this in this like plastic water bottle that's clearly been seen better days. But he said, so I read it when I got it. It says 45% alcohol on the bottle, and so I was like, so this is 45%. He's like, no, this is actually 65%. That's wrong. And so
What?
I don't really know the amount of alcohol content in this thing. All I know is I would consider this. I've had it a few times before. I would call it basically dragon vodka because it's the strongest alcohol I've ever had in my life. I feel like I could feel every drop going down my body there. So just to sort of advertise this interesting homemade vodka, I have a shot here that I will take, and you guys could judge based on, I guess, on my reaction of how strong it is. But a little nervous to take it because this is pretty freaking strong. Strongest alcohol I've ever had. But here it goes, and then I'll show off the next beverage I have. Okay, I'm back. After I was blowing out smoke for a little bit. So that one's a little strong, to say the least. I'm still feeling the effects right now. Anyway, the next drink I have. So, because I decided to make this a little interesting, and I know that John and Charlie are trying kind of like alcohol purists to a certain extent. They're always showing off these luxurious bottles or whatsoever. Or John is interacting with his doll on a regular basis, maybe drinking with it. I don't know. Anyways, so just because I like to screw with people, I think it would be funny. So I have this Boone County bourbon. Shout out to all those in good old Kentucky. And, I decided what would happen. Ooh, if we get a little mad scientist going, Frankenstein type stuff, Dr. Frankenstein here. What would happen if I created something that I call Borbonsky, which is a combination of bourbon and vodka.
God bless you.
And so I put a little shot here, this magical potion. I don't know what's going to happen, but I decided.
Not a good idea.
So I'm going to take a little shot here, toast to our first live session and to all those fans watching. And so we'll see how this tastes. And if it works out well, then maybe I can start selling this as like a side gig, or it could become the sponsor of our podcast. So,
Okay, Bobby. I'm not sure how much you can counsel your younger brother, but he may just need somebody to talk to when this is all over. Or maybe, if not tonight, maybe tomorrow morning when he's feeling better. But Bobby, what are you up to tonight?
Well, as any goalie would need to do, it's all about hydration for me tonight. I have some Propel Zero Gatorade mix that I've put together in this bottle here to get me nice and hydrated so I can be like Jim Craig and dominate the Soviets.
All right. Finally, Bob, what did you pull out of your liquor cabinet tonight?
All right. Well, I'm actually saving this for dinner, which will commence shortly after our podcast. This is Pax's Red Blend. It's actually Portuguese. Good red blend that I think it would go with a lot of things. And it's has all my criteria, the easy access top. As you know, access issues are important to me. And good stuff.
All right. So cheers, everyone. Everybody's drinking in good health tonight. So Charlie, comes that time of the section where we got to get into predictions. Tonight, I know we're be thinking about college basketball. Can you take it from here?
You bet. So we're going to need everybody to unmute because we're going to do kind of rapid fire around the horn, conference by conference. If you have any astute commentary, keep it brief. And we're going to start with the Big Ten. I want to hear everybody's Big Ten championship pick. And we're going to go, we'll go rapid fire, oldest to youngest on each one of these. So, Bob, let's hear from you first.
Big Ten, Michigan State.
Purdue.
Where they left off.
Zach Edey and Purdue got this baby.
Okay, I'm going to go with AJ Storr and the Badgers.
I got Purdue and Edey coming back.
You lost Benny?
Yo,
I'm
Benny.
back. I'm back. Don't worry. Just calm down, everyone. So I'm gonna go with a little bit of a kind of dark horse pick here, and go with Indiana University.
All right. I'll take Michigan State.
Okay, let's move on to the Pac-12. Bob?
Southern Cal.
You know what? I think it's going to be the Ducks. I got Oregon.
Arizona.
I've got USC, a lot of talent.
I'm gonna go with Oregon.
Take Stanford. Just kidding. I'll take Arizona.
Bob, Big East.
Big East, I like Creighton.
John. Oh, boy.
Okay,
Here we
Big
go.
East.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Big East.
St. John's.
Marquette.
Creighton.
UConn.
Give me UConn.
Bob, Big 12.
Gotta go with Kansas.
Kansas. Can't really bet against them.
Kansas.
Rock Jock. Jayhawk.
Of course, Kansas.
A different team. I'll go Kansas.
Wise decision.
ECC.
Duke.
You know, I'm going to bet on defense. Virginia's got a load on defense, so we're going to Cavaliers.
Duke.
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 Give me Jim Larinaga's Miami Hurricanes.
SEC.
Kentucky.
I don't care for them, and they typically underachieve. But I'm going with Kentucky Wildcats too.
Tennessee.
Arkansas.
Good old Kentucky.
Arkansas.
Okay, time for everybody to pick a mid-major sleeper. Bob?
To me, it would be it depends on your definition of a mid-major sleeper. But I would go with Yale or Drake. I'm going to stick with Yale because I think they got more coming back.
Virginia Commonwealth.
St. Mary's.
New Mexico, coached by former Gopher Richard Pitino.
Kansas State.
That's not a mid-major.
Pretty close.
Is,
Yeah. They may play like one.
KU fans might argue they are.
is St. John's in the Big East? Yes, they are. All right.
Yeah.
Less of a sleeper, but I love watching FAU. I think they might be top 10 preseason though. I'll still take FAU.
Okay. Last, most importantly, let's hear everybody's final four picks. Feel free to add a little more commentary and color if you'd like. Bob, to you.
All right, my final four: Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, and Creighton. I think Duke's going to win. I think last year's experience, including the game in which they were knocked out of the tournament, when they were just out-muscled and pushed around, I think that's going to contribute to their growth this season. And their big kid, Filipowski, who was banged up quite a bit in that game with Tennessee last year, I think he's going to set the tone, and Duke will pull it out.
Okay. I'm going to give you Purdue, Duke, Michigan State, and Kansas.
Okay. I'm going to go with Marquette, Purdue, kind of following the Virginia bounce back model of when they lost in the first round and then came back to win it all. UConn and the Wisconsin Badgers.
Well, I have Kansas Jayhawks, adding in Hunter Dickinson from Michigan. That's huge. Team's going to be absolutely loaded again. Michigan State, they always tend to do well in the tournament. I have Houston. They got a lot of NIL money in Houston. They might actually compete with Kansas for the Big 10 or Big 12 title this year. And then Florida Atlantic, returning their whole starting five.
I'm going to go with Duke, Kansas, Purdue, and we'll go with Kentucky.
One last spin around the horn. Give me your national champion, if you have not already done so, Bob.
Well, let me jump in real quick.
Yep.
I'll do my four. UConn, Michigan State, Creighton, and Villanova.
Okay, national champions, Bob.
Duke and a Duke Kansas final.
Okay.
It's going to be what everyone really wants, an all Big Ten final. Purdue, Michigan State. And Purdue's got the big guy. In the end, it's going to make the difference. Purdue, national champion.
I'm going to go with an all Wisconsin final. The Badgers over Marquette.
That'd be cool.
I have Kansas against Houston in the national championship, and I have NIL paying dividends and being the first time it's really proven that NIL can make a major difference. I have Houston winning the title.
I'm going to go with Kansas over Kentucky.
I'll take a return of the Big Ten and early 2000s powerhouses. Michigan State over UConn.
There you have it.
Okay.
One last thing I want to add. Wisconsin is going to be the national champion in basketball, men's hockey, women's hockey, and volleyball. You heard it here first.
I like that you wear that Badger red on your sleeves. I really do. I might encourage you that THC lemonade iced tea, there's something else in it. Just give that some thought. All right. So before we wrap things up, around the horn, what's going on there? Sort of the important events we haven't touched on tonight, but are certainly making headlines or at least achieving some level of notoriety in sports. Bob, let's go to you.
Couple of global events of note. One is the World Cup of Cricket has come down, or is about to come down, to its final four. At this point, on the in the standings, India leads. They're undefeated, 6-0, followed by South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia. Interestingly, fifth right now is Afghanistan, which has not been eliminated from contention for the final four. So that would be an extraordinary development. Meanwhile, in the World Cup of Rugby, in a classic final, Springbok, South Africa defeated the All Blacks of New Zealand 12-11 in what has been described as one of the most exciting games in rugby ever. And this puts Springbok, South Africa, at the top of the 10 World Cups that they've had. South Africa, Springbok now owns 4 of them. And finally, one little hockey note. Last Saturday night, rather, Bobby and I were watching a rather mundane hockey game between Dartmouth and Harvard that went 1-1 through regulation, then through overtime, and then they went into a penalty shootout that played out the way I've never seen one play before. You had 35 consecutive shooters stopped by the respective goalies on the two sides before Harvard finally knocked one in the 18th round of the penalty shoot. Something truly extraordinary.
Bob, I'm not sure if that says more about the goalies or about the guys who are actually handling the pucks.
Only time will tell.
Yeah, that is, I gotta admit, that is truly unbelievable. All right. Of course, speaking of hockey, the other night, same night, Wisconsin Badgers, on their road back to superstardom, totally dismantled the formerly number 1 ranked Minnesota Gophers. They swept them on the weekend, and it looks like college hockey's back where it ought to be again. Then I think there's the sort of the saga that's going on with the Michigan scandal, and I think what'll be interesting now is you've got sort of a clock that's going to start ticking, and that's with the NCAA deciding if they're going to levy any sort of penalty on Michigan before Michigan reaches the playoff and or the national championship game. So it's going to be some spotlight on that here, and probably some pressure a couple different ways. I don't know how much more evidence you really need in addition to what they already have, because it looks pretty compelling to me. Okay, Charlie.
Real quick on the Michigan issue, show of hands, raise your hand if you think that the NCAA or the Big Ten or the Michigan administration itself will come down heavily on Michigan before the end of the season. Raise your hand if you think that they will. I think that's 2. All right. I think they've got to do it. I mean, this is, they've been caught red-handed. Everybody can see it plain as day. I think the powers that be lose all sorts of credibility if they don't make a move. So it'll be pretty fascinating. One other Big Ten football note you probably heard about today. Iowa has announced that their offensive coordinator will not return next year. Brian Ferentz. Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Interestingly, it appears the decision was not Kirk Ferentz's decision. And technically, Brian Ferentz did not report to his dad. He reported to the interim athletic director. So the announcement was made by the interim athletic director that Brian Ferentz will not be back next year.
Has there been any subsequent announcement from Coach Ferentz?
Not that I've seen.
Wow. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out the next 4 or 5 weeks.
For sure. He's going to finish the year.
Right.
Yeah.
But will Ferentz announce he's staying, or is he going to leave now? It'd be interesting. I mean, head coach Ferentz.
Yeah. Right.
It's an interesting one.
Yep.
Okay. Bobby, what you got going?
Yeah, so a couple things. Yeah, sticking with Big Ten West football. It's become a 4-team race now. We got 3 kind of somewhat mediocre 3-2 teams. And I think it's probably going to come down to the Minnesota-Wisconsin game, most likely, to see who's actually going to go to Indy to get likely demolished. It'll be fun. I mean, yeah, Minnesota finally got over the hump against Iowa, and so we'll see if we can keep the axe as well. It's the first time we've had the axe and the Florida Rosedale to pick at the same time since 1993. So nice to see the Gopher football team finding a way to win. One other pretty sad story out of the hockey world. Former Minnesota Duluth hockey player Adam Johnson, who was playing in England, actually died from injuries on the ice when he was cut in the neck by a skate blade. This is a pretty rare occurrence for something like this to happen. There have been incidents like this before, but it's extremely rare that it ends that badly. But the English Ice Hockey League has already announced they're going to make neck guards mandatory starting next season, which I really think they should be at all levels, absolutely in youth hockey. I'm pretty sure they were mandatory when I was playing. I'm not sure how strictly it was enforced necessarily, but it was always kind of known that you were supposed to be wearing one. I could see that happening at all levels pretty quickly, because there have been lots of other close calls where a skate just barely misses a guy. So hopefully this brings some awareness to that.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very scary thing. It's a lot of warnings, a lot of players and parents ought to be heeding in terms of what can happen on the ice.
Let me just chime in on that. Bobby, as your former coach, I will say yes. They paid strict attention to wearing neck guards at the youth level.
All right. Good to hear that. Benny, what you thinking?
Well, the only news I really have is that it was just announced literally like an hour ago that Lionel Messi has won the Ballon d'Or award for best soccer player in the world. So first time someone who plays for an MLS team currently has ever won it. So kind of a pretty amazing thing for the MLS to hype up now for next season. So.
Okay. Finally, Nick, we're going to kick it back to you.
Well, I'll keep things on the train of the Big Ten West. That you're talking about, Brian Ferentz, is early, I guess, announcement of his departure after this year. It's been discussed that in his contract, he had a 25 point per game, I guess, goal that he was given. And in the final year of the Big Ten West, thus far through 9 weeks, nobody is above 25 points per game. With Wisconsin leading the way 24.75, but it's not just an Iowa thing, the Big Ten West. This is how they play football. It's good to see.
Defense rules.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, it's almost Halloween. We want to thank all our fans out there in the world of live broadcast for joining us tonight. We wish you safety tonight and tomorrow night throughout trick-or-treating. Please be thoughtful. There's a lot of kids out there. And we'll be back with you real soon. Good night, everyone.